Hey up, three men whiskey here. Time for another whiskey and Christmas movie to warm cockles on these cold nights. As you can tell, I'm not actually from Yorkshire, but I dabble. I try to fit in where possible. Have done for quite a few years now. Not entirely sure my friends appreciate it, but they humour me, I suppose. Given the movie I'm going to watch, I felt it was important to try and get into a little bit of Yorkshire character because it stars Yorkshire's greatest actor as far as I am concerned. And there's been a fair few good ones over the years, but this one's definitely my favourite. When Charles Dickens sat down to write A Christmas Carol back in the 1840s, I'm not entirely sure he could have imagined the sheer level of love that his original novella is held in. A Christmas Carol is Christmas in many senses. There have been a gazillion adaptations of that book, and it's 180 years old, something like that. It's remarkable, just how the story of A Christmas Carol remains important to this day, and it does. There have been so many versions that it would be impossible to list them all, but here are a few. 1951 version is probably considered the kind of the granddaddy, the most famous one, the one that is a lot of people's favourites out there. 1970 Scrooge, I watched that on December the 1st. That is probably my favourite adaptation of it. Lots of song and dance numbers, very very OTT, and some good comedy in there as well. It's the 1984 version starring George C. Scott, also very famous. There have been American adaptations as well with Bill Murray. There's even a version with Will Ferrell, which I have not seen, and I'm not entirely sure I will. But the one I'm going to watch is probably lesser known. It wasn't actually a big production. It didn't get a cinematic release. It was a TV movie back in 1999, and a real passion project for the star. Prior to making this film, he had starred in his own one-man show of A Christmas Carol, which he had toured around the States with and around the UK. And clearly it means so much to him, the story and the original novel. And so much so that the version that I'm going to watch is the one that, while it may not be the most famous, is the one that's considered probably the most faithful to the original text, which again, there's always something for that. I am, of course, speaking of A Christmas Carol, starring Yorkshire's most famous actor, a man who has played so many characters, from Professor X in X-Men to the greatest Starfleet captain of them all, Jean-Luc Picard, Patrick Stewart. And as I am watching a Patrick Stewart movie, I felt I should get a whiskey to pair with it from as close as possible to his hometown of Huddersfield. Now, unfortunately, the whiskey I am drinking is not actually from Yorkshire, but Yorkshire is actually quite a big place. And the distillery that's actually closest to Huddersfield is White Peak Distillery, which is just down the road from me over in Derbyshire. So, not actually Yorkshire, but it's not far. It's pretty close. And a lot of those Yorkshire ideals kind of seep in to Derbyshire as well. Or at least I think they do anyway. So I'm going to be drinking a Wireworks. Wireworks is the name of the brand, the whiskey that they produce over at White Peak. It's named Wireworks because that is where it is produced. It's produced in an old Wireworks factory, and so that link with the old industrial past is runs throughout the distillery. And I thought it was quite a nice little link to A Christmas Carol, a story that is set at the start of the industrial era, and a whiskey that is being produced, I guess, at the end, in the post-industrial era in an old industrial building. So I'm going to be having Alter Ego, freshly opened today. I've had it on my shelf for a while. I've got a lot of Wireworks bottles on my shelf, just because, honestly, I love those guys. I do think it's probably the best English distillery out there right now, and there are some pretty good ones, these days. But they're local to me. They're a great bunch of people. It's a lovely place to visit for a tour. You can hear all about the history, not only of the whiskey, but also of of the Wireworks factory as well. Beautiful bottling, gorgeous colour on this one, and a lot of experimentation. I know this one, was born out of a whole load of that experimentation that these new distilleries love to do. So, I've got my flat cap on. I've got my not quite Yorkshire but nearly whiskey, and I'm going to go and watch Yorkshire's Great in a Dickens classic. So I'll see you in a minute. So I am back from watching the 1999 version of A Christmas Carol with Patrick Stewart. Great fun. Feeling quite Christmassy after that. Went on a bit of a journey. He was very grumpy at the beginning, but he ended up the life and soul of the party by the end, which is great to see, as it should be. It's a little different, and weirdly it's a little different as a Christmas Carol story, only because a lot of the modern, not even modern, but the ones from the last however many decades have tended to try and play with the original text and make it a little bit more funny, add a bit of comedy in there through the different characters, particularly through Ebenezer Scrooge. And this one doesn't do that. It's very faithful to the original text, which means it's quite serious throughout. And that's okay. I think because it's a TV movie, it's only about an hour and a half long, so it's relatively short. That kind of works. I think if it was longer, it might drag on a little bit. It might feel, maybe a bit too depressing. But for me, I think it's the perfect length. It works quite nicely. It's got the lovely story that is A Christmas Carol in there, and a great piece of redemption, obviously, for the lead character by the end. There's some people in there that I had no idea were in there. I'd completely forgotten, or they weren't even famous at the time when they were in it. Richard E. Grant, I had forgotten was in it, playing Bob Cratchit. Dominic West, who was clearly not famous at the time he was in this. He was a relatively young character in this, playing Scrooge's nephew. So yeah, I love it when characters pop up actors pop up that before they were famous. So that was kind of cool. And yeah, Patrick Stewart, he was great. He you can see why this was a passion project for him. Absolutely loves playing the character. It's a character he was arguably born to play, and he's superb. He's superb throughout in it, as I would expect for a Yorkshireman of his caliber. So yeah, really good film. Really enjoyed it. Not my favourite A Christmas Carol adaptation, but still a worthy watch, and one that I would highly recommend if you haven't seen it and you fancy a little bit of Dickensian Christmas movie. Then you can't go wrong with this one. I think I will give it a good score. I'm going to give it 9 ladies dancing. Yeah, I may need to check that I've got that right, but I think it's ladies dancing. Yeah, because it's good. It's really, really good. Really enjoyed it. Whiskey wise, my my non-Yorkshire whiskey. Wireworks is really good. Look, I'm a big fan of White Peak Distillery. I go around telling everyone that I've not ever had a bad one, which I'm slightly worried that one day I will have a bad one and I'll have to change my spiel. But this is very good. This Alter Ego is it's different, and it's different because it is quite experimental. They played with their cut points, which the cut in which they decide which bit of the spirits that they're distilling goes in to the into the cask, and whether that's the thing that makes it so different, I'm not sure, but I guess that's what they were expecting. It does feel a little young, if I'm being honest with you. Alter Ego was is one of their early ones, and so yeah, I think that youth that does come through a little bit in a negative way. But other than that, there's loads of great notes in there. You know, vanilla. There's a sweetness, you know, almost kind of a fruity sweetness that I was quite surprised to get, because I don't think this has had any kind of sherry or port influences. I know they use STR casks, which are kind of ex wine casks that they've redone. So there might be a bit of something coming through there. But yeah, it's a very pleasant dram. Not my favourite Wireworks, but still a very, very decent one. And for that reason, I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. I think that's fair. A 7 out of 10. Some of the other ones, things like The Necessary Evil, which is probably their best one that they've done. That one is definitely up there in the 9s, I think, in terms of great whiskies. So yeah, love my Wireworks. Really enjoyed watching Patrick Stewart Yorkshire his way through Dickens, and yeah, super stuff. Tomorrow I will be watching an all-time classic, one that is considered one of the greats in Christmas movies. So I am looking forward to sitting down and seeing that one. I don't think I've seen it for a good 10 years or so, so I'll be interested to see how that's going. It's a good, I want to say it's probably about 80 years old by now, so yeah, we shall see. And yeah, please do like, subscribe, all that stuff. And I'm going to go and take my hat off and see you tomorrow. Cheers.